Hello, this is teacher Sara from phuketpals. Welcome to yet another GED RLA screencast. The topic of this lesson is overcoming spelling problems. If you find this video useful, please hit the subscribe button below. It helps us help more people like you. Alright, before we begin, let's do a vocabulary refresher. Syllables are part of a word that is pronounced as a single unit, such as when you separate going between go and ing, and then feverish between fever-ish. So you can actually count the syllables using your fingers. Try separating the words there. So you've got go, wing, feverish. So those are 2 and 3 syllables, respectively. Nouns, a word other than a pronoun used to identify any of a class of people, places, or things, also known as common nouns, or to name a particular one of these, proper noun. Suffix is a morpheme added at the end of a word to form a derivative. For example, you can add ation, fy, ing, itis, it can also be ed. Prefix, a letter or group of letters added to the beginning of a word to make a new word, such as reuse, you added re in front of use, and reschedule, re again in front of schedule. Possessives show ownership by adding an apostrophe, an s, or both. Homonyms, words that sound the same but are spelled differently and have different meanings. So, before we dive right in, a good essay can be marred by misspelled words. You will need to know some of the basic rules, memorize exceptions to the rules, and of course, practice. A dictionary can also help you with difficult words, but it is easier to spell words if you divide them into syllables. As we just said, a syllable is a part of a word that is pronounced as a single unit. So say the first word to hear how many syllables there are, and spell each one as you write. Notice that each syllable contains at least one vowel. Alright, so spell it out. Concentrate makes up concentrate. Opportunity makes up opportunity. So how many syllables are there? There are 5 syllables in this word, and it could really help you by sounding them out so that you can tell if there are double letters in there, such as this word, or if it doesn't, such as the difference between dessert and desert. Another way to do that is by patterns. So words with I and E, generally, if the vowel sound is E, put the I first except after C. So for words like believe, thief, niece, and receive, as you can see here, except after C it becomes an EI. If you think of the word friend, it works the same way as these other 3 words. The exceptions to this rule include C's, either, neither, leisure, and weird. So these are just 5 words that you need to remember, and there you go. Everything else applies with the rule above. Second rule, if the vowel sound is A or I, put the E before the I, such as in neighbor, fright, and height. Words that end in CEDE, SEDE, and CEED, only one word ends in SEDE, which is supersede, and that's going to be easy to remember since there's just one. Only 3 words end in CEED, which are exceed, proceed, and succeed. Again, easier to remember the exceptions instead of all the other words that follow. All the others end in CEDE. Proceed, recede, secede, and concede. So like I said, it's easier to follow those that only end in these and the CEED and SEDE instead of the CEDE, which is all the others. Use full FUL for nouns and adjectives and fully for adverbs. If the adjective ends with FUL, there's no need to add another L. It works the same way for nouns such as careful, thoughtful, powerful, and deceitful. If the words end in fully, however, use two L's, such as carefully, thoughtfully, powerfully, and deceitfully. In general, remember as well that adverbs end in Y, but adjectives do not, of course, with the exception of lonely and lovely and crazy. As you know, English, as you already probably know, English has a lot of exceptions to the rules, so there are no exact rules, but there are some patterns that you can remember, and these are some of them. Also, mind your IBLES and your ables, ABLES. You can add ABLE or ABILE to certain words to transform them into adjectives. In other cases, the able or able is an essential part of the word. So how do you tell whether a word ends in able or able? Here are a couple of guidelines to help. First of all, far more words end in able than in able, so if you have to guess able. If the stem is a word in its own right, chances are that able is the correct ending. For example, if you take the ending of dependable, you have depend, which is already a word. Take the ending of horrible, and you have whore, which isn't a word, at least not spelled this way. If the stem ends in a hard C or hard G sound, chances are that able is the correct ending. Change Y to I before adding a suffix. If a word ends in Y, change the Y to I before adding a suffix, unless the suffix begins with I. As in the following words: happy, happiness, defy, defied, or defying, and empty, emptiness. Add a prefix correctly. Adding a prefix to the beginning of a word generally doesn't change the word's spelling, such as with dissatisfied, so if you take that away, it still remains satisfied. You keep the S there, otherwise it's going to be a word. Next, dissimilar, again, if you take that away, you keep the S there, and that's about it. Ennoble, immeasurable, misspelling, non-negotiable, and unnecessary. Next, when adding ing or ed to a verb, if the verb ends in e, drop the e before adding ed. So that's not making, M-A-K-E-I-N-G, it's just M-A-K-I-N-G. Such as with use becomes using, ride becomes riding. If the verb has one syllable and a single consonant preceded by a single vowel, double the final consonant before adding ed or ing, such as when let becomes letting and hit becomes hitting. If the word does not meet this criteria, do not double the consonant. Listen becomes listened. Sleep becomes sleeping. That was a sneak peek. So basically, those are some of the ways that you can remember so that you can overcome spelling problems. But of course, the best way to do it is to memorize and to remember what the words are and how they're spelled, and also the best way to make sure that you know more words and not just have to rely on the words that you know. Sometimes when you just can't remember the spelling, all you have to do is choose another word. And the way to do that is to keep calm and read a book. It had unlimited amounts, well, surely limited, but just being, just exaggerating in a way. All you have to do is read a book. You'll find a lot of words there, a lot of new words that you might have never heard before, never seen before. It's always a good idea to learn new words and remember the spelling whenever you read them. Once you see a new word that you think is interesting or a new word that you've just learned, just remember the spelling. Here's a little quiz for you. Just a couple of questions, maybe 2. There you go. So you can just read on this side and try to answer it on this side. Again, you know the drill. All you have to do is pause for a little bit, take your time, and then try to answer the questions without cheating based on the rules that we've just talked about, or tips. All right, sentence 1 here. To encourage recycling, some service stations and oil-changing facilities are beginning to accept used motor oil from people who change the oil in their own cars. Give you a second to think about that. If your answer is number 1, change beginning to, that looks a bit like beginning, to beginning with a double N, then you are correct. Number 2, sentence number 2, stations that receive used oil have to pass government standards to obtain certification to recycle it. I'm giving you a second again to think about your answer. If your answer is number 1, you are terribly wrong. Because the correct answer is number 2, change receive with an IE to receive with an EI. And there you have it. Again, thank you for watching. That's all from me, Teacher Sara from phuketpals. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button below and hit thumbs up if you like this video and find it useful. Have a good day.